Just make it work.
So, after the last video, where I cleaned the MAF pins, fitted and coded a new injector to cylinder 3, I was thinking about the way the DME does some rounding in its calculations, and the figures you input come back slightly differently. It says on the various pages in the software things like, due to conversions performed in the control unit, the last place of each value may deviate slightly from the injector value. This deviation is not an error. So the numbers on the injector, Google tells me, stand for flow rate and reaction time. So the injector I put in was 576201, which came back from the DME as 575199. So the difference is 1 on the flow rate and 2 on the reaction time, which seems right. So while pondering, I had a quick gander at the old injector I took out and compared it to what was in the DME before I started. So on the injector, it was 578194, but the DME was showing 573184, which is 5 out on the flow rate and 10 out on the reaction time, which got me thinking, that doesn't look right. How can that be the case? And then I thought, what if at some point during its, I think, 6 previous owners and a trip through the salvage auctions, someone had put 4 injectors in the car and not coded them to the DME. I'd often felt it was a bit lackluster, lacking in torque. I know it's not a powerful car by modern standards at 175 original horses, but it felt like something wasn't quite right. I'd been driving diesels for 10 years previously, so I thought maybe it's just something you need to get used to again. I didn't know how it should feel, especially not at 13 years old. The 2 catalytic converters in the exhaust manifold were ruined when I got it. Changing the maniverter, as it gets called, was a right mission in my shed garage. So the question is, has the fueling been off all along? So I set about doing some Columbo work. I didn't want to take the other 3 injectors out, partly because I couldn't be bothered, partly because I didn't have any new seals or the tooling to fit them. I know I've seen some people have done YouTube videos on how you can do it without the proper tools, but I also didn't want to wait for deliveries again, the usual stories. I had a cheap eBay borescope endoscope camera that I'd used to check the sump for pieces of timing chain guides. I spent some considerable time hunched over the engine bay, fiddling about to try and get shots of the codes. After some squinting, I decided on the numbers. I put them into my spreadsheet, and notwithstanding me making a mistake reading them, the results just look way off. So I think that's what's happened. I think someone's put 4 injectors in it and not coded them. So I put the injector values for what's actually in the car into the DME, and what came back looks right. So since then I've done 4 50-mile trips for work, and the engine feels much better. I realise it's adaptive. I know there's some convoluted routine for resetting the adaptations and then driving in a certain way, certain gear, certain speed for however long. But I thought I'd just drive it, and it's on the theory that it should just sort itself out just by driving it if you're patient. It has more torque now. It just feels happier. I've not really given it the beans much because I'm too scared of breaking it, but it feels a lot better to drive. So the injector faults are gone. Engine feels good. On the downside, 2D06 is back. It threw a check engine light on my last 50-mile leg after I just fueled up. So once I'd had a little cry and stopped myself from teaching it a lesson with a branch, Basil Fawlty style, I thought it was time to seek out a logical explanation. So thinking back, when I smoked the intake, I opened the oil filler cap and checked the engine was full of smoke, a decent pressure going on. And after a while, obviously there was no smoke around the intake area, but after a while there was some smoke coming out from down where the EGR inlet pipe connects to the exhaust manifold. At the time, I discounted it as being before the EGR valve, thinking that won't matter as the EGR valve closes. I checked with INPA, the EGR valve is working fine, it closes, so I thought that wouldn't count as a vacuum leak. But now, I think I may have been wrong to discount that, working on the theory that when the EGR is open, it's expecting only exhaust gases, not exhaust gases and some fresh air. So this could be the reason for my 2D06. I knew I had a thin metal gasket missing between the exhaust manifold and the EGR pipe, as when I changed the maniverter the old one had disintegrated. At the time, obviously I didn't have a spare, I didn't want to wait for a delivery, all that stuff, so I just put it back together thinking it would be alright. So I thought I'd better make that situation right. I ordered the gaskets. Once that had been delivered, I got the old girl in the shed garage, and I even said to my wife, it won't be long, this won't take long. Famous last words, obviously. So I jacked up the front end, removed all the usual plastics and the under tray, and set about trying to fit the gasket. Access was much worse than I'd remembered, so time's obviously a healer. I thought I might be able to nudge the pipe up and slip the gasket under, but no joy. So I set about removing the pipe between the manifold and the EGR valve using BMW Special Tool and then BMW Special Tool Extension Edition. I had to take a bolt out of the bell housing to move a bracket out the way, and I really didn't want to have to take the whole flipping exhaust off it again. There wasn't much scope for the video camera as the car's barely a foot off the ground. There was much grunting, moaning and industrial language. Once I got my arm up into the gap to get to the bolts, obviously I couldn't see anything, so it was all by feel and trying to contort my fat hands into making it work. Eventually I got the pipe off, and look what I found. It's got a crack split in it, so it wasn't just a gasket problem. Looks a bit worse than it did as I've been playing with it, but it was definitely broken. There's a crack in it, and you can see there's sort of black soot where it's been leaking out. So I suppose the moral of this story is the smoke doesn't lie. I've ordered a new one on eBay, $13.99 for a used one, and I've ordered a bendy wendy socket extension, which should make things easier. So I'll report back once I've fitted it and done some driving. Over and out.